Welcome back to the Gravity Garage. Today we're going to talk about helmet safety and helmet construction. You know, I think that helmets are one of those things that are obviously very important to wear. They're designed not necessarily for a fashion show, but really to protect your head and protect your brain in the unlikely event that you're going to have a crash. And I want to talk about how helmets are constructed. I want to talk about some of the inspection things that you need to be doing to your helmet to make sure that after you've had a crash that your helmet's not compromised and is safe for you to wear on the next ride. You know, realize that a lot of these helmets all have removable liners, and internally they're all with this foam lining inside. And so after a crash, it's really important that you take the time to take the foam, take the liner out of your helmet and inspect the inside of your helmet. And what you want to look for is obviously any sort of impacts on the outside of your helmet that are compromising the shell, but also importantly is the inside to make sure the foam isn't cracked or compressed, because this is the stuff that's going to absorb the energy from the trail impact and then protect you in the future from, other impacts to your helmet. And if you see a crack on the outside, obviously you need to replace your helmet. If you see a crack on the inside, obviously you need to replace your helmet. But if you see a really big depression in the foam on these helmets, you're going to really want to replace that helmet just so you're safe for next time. So why Cali helmets? You know, here at the bike park, we're a big proponent of the Cali helmet because we feel that they make the safest, best constructed helmets on the market. So let's talk about how Cali helmets are constructed. Let's talk about how other helmet manufacturers construct their helmet. So the goal of a helmet is to, in the unlikely event of a crash, to absorb the energy that the ground is going to put into your head. And so all helmets are constructed with an outside shell that's going to be hard, and then inside they're going to have a foam. But where some of these other manufacturers fail, or maybe not do it quite as well as Cali, is that they don't necessarily mold the foam into their helmet. They either glue it and the glue can be uneven, or they simply just make the outside shell, make the inside shell, and put the two together, which can then lead a gap between the shell and the foam. And when you have a gap between the shell and the foam, you don't get direct transmission of the energy that goes in the helmet, and it's just not going to protect your head as well. So what Cali does is they take the time, and they call it composite fusion, to mold the foam into the helmet. So if you look at this, there is no gap between the shell and the foam, and so you get direct transmission of the energy from the impact through the shell into the foam, and the foam is going to absorb that energy so that your brain and your head doesn't have to take that energy. And that's what you're looking for out of a helmet. And so once again, you see no gap, and with this they can actually decrease the thickness of the shell of the helmet, because the plastic is the part of your helmet that, or the carbon fiber, depending on what kind of helmet you have, is the part that actually doesn't absorb the energy. It's the foam. So with this, the way they do composite fusion, they can decrease this thickness, make the helmet actually absorb more energy, and make a safer product for your head. And this is composite fusion. And if you look at their nicest helmets, they've got composite fusion plus. And what this is actually a dual density foam. So you can see on this helmet right here, we've got two different foams. We've got a really soft foam next to your head to absorb the energy, and then a darker foam here, which is a little bit firmer, to help also dissipate the energy with pyramid foam inside. And what this does is just produce one of the safest helmets on the market for your head. All right, let's talk about another subject, something very popular in downhill mountain biking. Everyone wants to have a DOT certified helmet. You know, DOT is a Department of Transportation certification to be able to take impact ratings at a certain velocity against certain objects. And basically the DOT helmets are going to be a little bit safer for your head in those high velocity collisions, in the unlikely event that you have a high velocity collision with a tree, going really fast at downhill speeds. And another way that Cali differs from a lot of the other manufacturers is they actually don't do a SNELL rating on their helmets. A lot of manufacturers will do a DOT and a SNELL rating on their helmet. And when the SNELL rating is basically a road rating for a pierce test. It's important on road motorcycles that if they were to fall, they could run into a metal spike, and that metal spike isn't supposed to pierce the helmet. And so this really doesn't apply to mountain biking and downhill mountain biking because we don't run into metal spikes on the trail. So Cali realizes this and only does a DOT rating on their helmets and not a full SNELL rating, because when you go to that full SNELL rating, you have to have an increase in the thickness of the outer shell of your helmet, which then again is much firmer and doesn't dissipate that energy and is not really appropriate for the type of riding that we're doing on bicycles. So you're really looking for a DOT specific helmet and not a DOT and SNELL rated helmet. It's going to be just a better product for your head. And another way that Cali, thinks outside the box and really produces the best helmet for your head. Introducing the new Cali Shiva helmet. This is their brand new DOT certified 1,000 gram mountain bike helmet. And the cool thing about this helmet is, well, I already said it. Well, it looks great for one, but it's also 1,000 grams. And the reason this is important because of Mr. Newton and his force equals mass time acceleration. Cali's taking the mass out of this helmet. We have the acceleration of the fall. If we take the mass out of the helmet and we have less force, this is less force on your head, less force on your neck, and yet another reason to have a super lightweight, full DOT Moto certified helmet that just looks absolutely fabulous. You can check it out coming soon from Cali Protectives. Thanks for joining us again here at the Gravity Garage. If you have any future topics you'd like for us to discuss, please comment below and subscribe above for future videos.